The mountains of eastern Afghanistan stretched like a jagged crown into the night sky, the ridgelines sharp and unforgiving beneath the silver light of a waning moon. Sergeant Alyssa Grant crouched behind a jagged boulder, the chill biting through her gloves, her rifle resting lightly against her shoulder, eyes scanning the rocky expanse below. The wind whispered through the canyons, carrying the faint scent of dust and distant campfires, but the air felt unnatural tonight, heavy, oppressive, like the mountains themselves were holding their breath. She reached for her radio, a routine comms check, something she'd done 100 times before. "Bravo 2, this is Viper 1. Comms check," she said, voice low, steady, trained to project calm even when fear curled at the edges of her mind. "Nothing." She tapped again, a static-filled crackle, a faint flicker of sound, then silence. Her stomach tightened. No static, no signal, nothing. It was the kind of silence that roars in your ears, a silence that signals danger in ways words cannot. She tried the backup channel, switching frequencies with a practiced thumb, praying, hopping, that she was merely out of range, that her team was simply delayed. Nothing. Her pulse accelerated, thundering in her chest. She could feel it in her fingertips, that deep, instinctual hum of adrenaline that told her, "You are alone." Alyssa pressed herself flatter against the rock, scanning the shadowed terrain below. Her night vision goggles cast a green glow over the world, transforming the jagged landscape into a surreal tableau of dark silhouettes. Small crevices became cliffs, bushes became hiding places, the ordinary became a maze. Then she noticed it, a faint orange flicker far below, dancing on the ridgeline. At first she thought it was the reflection of moonlight off metal, but as she adjusted her goggles, the flicker resolved into a small flame, unnatural and deliberate, out of place in the empty, barren terrain. Her breath caught, a signal, a trap, something else entirely. The mountains were alive with unseen eyes, she reminded herself. Every patrol, every movement left a mark, and if that light wasn't part of their team, then someone was watching her. A low shiver ran down her spine. Her hand hovered over her rifle's grip. She was trained to react, but training had never fully prepared her for absolute isolation in a hostile zone with no comms, no backup, and no certainty about what was waiting for her. Alyssa exhaled slowly, forcing calm. Panic was the enemy of precision. Fear could kill you faster than bullets ever could. She checked her gear. Rifle secure, sidearm ready, grenades counted, flashlight off, every movement deliberate, every breath measured. Her eyes darted along the ridge. There. A shadow moved, slight, deliberate. She froze, focusing, letting her instincts sharpen. The figure crouched, scanning the valley below. Not American, not friendly. Weapons slung low but ready. The man was calm, trained. The kind of calm that only comes when danger is second nature. Alyssa's stomach knotted. The figure was hunting and she was the prey. She pressed herself deeper against the boulder, heart hammering in her chest. She could hear the faintest whisper of movement, rocks shifting, wind brushing against the terrain, her own pulse echoing in her ears. The night was alive with tension, each second stretching into eternity. The radio crackled faintly, almost enough to hope, but when she tried again, the sound died immediately. Someone was jamming them. Someone knew their position. Alyssa's mind raced, recalling every detail from the patrol briefing. Recon mission, low-risk surveillance of suspected enemy movement in the area. Coordinates had been verified. Routes had been cleared. And yet here she was, alone on a mountainside where even the shadows seemed to whisper danger. Her training kicked in. She remembered the principles drilled into her since her first day at Fort Bragg. Observe, anticipate, act. Observation, the flame below, the lone figure on the ridge. Tracks in the dust suggesting multiple enemy movements. Anticipation, they were closing in. Acting, she had to move carefully, silently, deliberately. Alyssa shifted, lowering her profile. The figure above hadn't noticed her yet, but the risk of exposure grew with every passing second. One misstep, one misplaced rock, one small glint of moonlight on her rifle barrel, and it could all end. Then she noticed something else, tiny disturbances in the earth beneath the figure. Footprints, not just his. Multiple sets converging on a point, fresh, too fresh. Her pulse raced faster. Half a dozen men, maybe more, moving in coordinated sweeps. They weren't wandering. They were hunting her team and by extension her. Alyssa swallowed hard. She couldn't warn Bravo 2, she couldn't reach them. She had nothing but herself and her instincts. Every muscle in her body coiled like a spring. She pressed her back against the jagged stone, listening, counting, planning. A crackling noise, different this time, came from behind her. She spun, rifle raised, the cold steel comforting in her hands. Nothing. Her pulse slowed slightly, but her nerves were frayed. The mountains around her seemed too quiet now, the kind of quiet that precedes an ambush. She scanned the ridges, counting movement, shadows, and light. Every ridge, every slope, every rock became a potential threat. And then it happened. The flame below blinked out. Alyssa's breath caught in her throat. Total darkness swallowed the valley. The hunter above paused, scanning, but no sound came from the radio. No signal, nothing but silence. Her stomach turned as the reality sank in. She was completely alone. Every route, every path, every option had vanished into uncertainty. The radio that had once connected her to her team, to backup, to a lifeline, was now dead. Alyssa exhaled slowly. There was only one thing she could do: survive. Her eyes scanned for cover, for movement, for escape. The mountains, once familiar from training exercises and prior patrols, now seemed alien, hostile. Every jagged rock, every shadow could conceal an enemy. Every sound could herald death. Her hands tightened around her rifle. She moved carefully along the ridge, testing her footing, counting every step, listening to every rustle. Each second stretched into an eternity, and yet the hunter above had not seen her. Alyssa forced herself to think, to strategize, to plan. One wrong move could end it all. She had no team, no communication, only instincts and courage, and the knowledge that every shadow might hide death itself. The wind picked up, whistling through the mountains like a mournful voice. The flame below, a warning or a lure, had vanished. The night closed in around her, and through the stillness a single horrifying thought anchored itself in her mind. The enemy knew she was here, and they were coming. She crouched behind her boulder, gripping her rifle, chest tight, eyes wide. The radio remained silent. The night seemed endless. And in that moment, Alyssa Grant understood something she had trained to accept but never fully faced. She was utterly alone. A movement at the edge of her vision caught her attention. Someone was out there, watching, waiting, silent, unseen. Her heart thundered, her instincts screamed, her fingers tightened around the rifle. And then the darkness shifted and she realized, whatever was coming next, she wouldn't be able to call for help. Not a whisper, not a word, not a single signal. She was alone, and the mountains were alive. The radio was dead. And the enemy was moving in. The mountains seemed to close in around Sergeant Alyssa Grant as she pressed forward, her boots crunching softly against the dry dust and jagged stone. Every step was deliberate, each movement measured, her rifle clutched close, ready to react. She could feel her pulse pounding in her ears, a deafening drum of urgency that threatened to betray her position. The moonlight provided just enough illumination to trace her path, but shadows lurked everywhere, twisting the jagged terrain into a maze of uncertainty. Her night vision goggles painted the world in ghostly green, revealing shapes in the distance that could be rocks, or could be something far more dangerous. Alyssa crouched low as she scanned the valley below. There it was again, a flicker, a movement, a shadow that didn't belong. She froze, muscles coiled like a spring, heart hammering. Every instinct screamed, "They know you're here." She dropped to one knee and ran her gloved fingers along the mountain dust. Tracks, fresh tire treads deeply etched into the earth, cutting a jagged path across the slope. Too fresh, too deliberate. Beside them, boot prints deep and purposeful marked the ground. Heavy boots, numerous. The footprints suggested at least 6 or 7 men, maybe more, moving quickly, efficiently, silently. The kind of training that meant they were not wandering, they were hunting. Her stomach clenched. They weren't looking for her team, they were looking for her. And the thought gnawed at her. Her team was somewhere behind her, out of reach, lost in radio silence, possibly already ambushed. Alyssa pressed herself flat against a jagged rock, breathing through her nose, counting seconds, scanning the horizon. Every shadow could conceal death. Every sound, distant rock shift, wind rustle, animal cry, could betray her. The mountains had never felt more hostile, more alive. Movement slight, up ahead she froze. Her fingers instinctively tightened around the rifle. Through her goggles she could see it. A lone figure crouched on a ridge, weapon at the ready, eyes sweeping the valley. Not American, not friendly. A predator. And it knew she was somewhere in this terrain. Her stomach knotted. She had trained for ambushes, for surprise encounters, for firefights, for impossible odds. But never alone, never with radio dead, never with the enemy sweeping the terrain like wolves closing in on a wounded deer. She slid backward along the rock face, slow, silent, each movement deliberate. Pebbles clattered lightly beneath her boots. A heartbeat later she froze. The figure above shifted its stance, scanning. His radio lifted, a faint glint catching the moonlight. He was calling in reinforcements, calling them to her. Alyssa swallowed hard. Reinforcements for the enemy. She pressed herself closer to the rock, every muscle tensed, every nerve screamed survival. The wind picked up, carrying the faint scent of burning brush. Orange glimmers in the distance caught her eye again. The flame had returned, dancing, taunting, signaling, or perhaps luring. Her stomach twisted. That flame could mean someone was trapped there, or it could be bait, set to lead her into a kill zone. Her mind raced. She had 2 choices: engage and risk drawing every enemy unit in the valley, or retreat into the unknown, into terrain she couldn't fully see, into cliffs and ridges that could end in death. Neither option offered comfort, neither guaranteed survival. She chose movement. Sliding sideways along the jagged rock face, Alyssa kept her rifle raised, body pressed low. The mountain was her ally if she used it well. She counted steps, memorized every contour. Every boulder could shield her. Every crevice could be a trap. Then she saw it. More shadows. 8 figures moving in coordinated sweeps, rifles raised, disciplined, silent hunters. They were organized. They were not searching randomly. They were closing in on a single point, her point. Alyssa's throat tightened. The realization hit her like a punch. They knew exactly where she had been. They had tracked her footprints, anticipated her moves. Every instinct, every training drill, every plan she had prepared evaporated under the weight of this truth. She pressed herself flat behind a rock, heart pounding, hands tight on her rifle. Her breath came shallow and fast. She had to think. She had to plan. She had to survive. A twig snapped behind her. Her body froze. Directly behind her, not beside, not ahead, behind. She pivoted slowly, rifle raised. The darkness seemed to thicken, pressing in from all sides. A young girl, no older than 10, stood there, barefoot, dirt streaking her small face, eyes wide with terror. Her clothes were torn, tattered by the rough terrain and months of hardship. She lifted her hands in trembling surrender. Alyssa's grip on the rifle loosened slightly. This was not the enemy. This was a complication. A child, alone, terrified, and clearly aware of the danger surrounding them. "SHH, I'm not going to hurt you," Alyssa whispered, voice low, soothing. The girl shook her head violently, pointing up the ridge toward the approaching armed men. Her eyes pleaded, "Help." She's telling the truth, Alyssa thought. They're coming. The child's broken English reached her ears like a dagger of warning. "Hide." Alyssa's stomach dropped. Not now, not here, not with the enemy closing in. She reached down, pulling the girl close. The child trembled violently against her side. Alyssa scanned the valley. The patrol above was methodical, moving with deadly precision, coordinating through radios that still screamed over frequencies Alyssa could not reach. She counted them, 6 men visible, at least 3 more hidden in shadow. They were hunting, and she was their prey. Time stretched. Seconds became minutes. Each breath threatened to betray her. Each movement could be fatal. She pressed the child into a shallow crevice, rocks shielding them as best as possible. Her heart hammered in her chest. The enemy leader raised his hand. 3 rifles swung, aimed directly at her hiding place. Alyssa's mind raced. Engage? Impossible. Retreat? Risk death. Wait. She might not have a next second. The leader stepped closer, reaching toward the crevice. Alyssa's fingers tightened around the rifle's grip. Her teeth clenched. No mistake now. The child whimpered. Alyssa whispered, "Stay calm, don't move." The first figure reached into the crevice. Alyssa felt the cold weight of inevitability pressing down. She inhaled, tight, sharp, aware every nerve, every reflex, every heartbeat could be her last. And then a spark of movement, something she could use. Her hand hovered over the flashbang at her belt. This could buy seconds, maybe enough to turn the tide. The enemy scout still reaching hadn't noticed her, yet. Alyssa's pulse raced. She could see every step, every shadow, every possible trajectory of danger. She could calculate, she could act. She had to act. Her fingers closed around the pin. One pull, one toss, 1 second. Before she could move, the twig snapped again, closer, too close. Her eyes snapped to the sound. A figure emerged from the shadows, not enemy, not American, unknown, dangerous, and watching. Alyssa's heart slammed against her ribs. The night had grown darker, the mountain tighter, the danger immediate. She knew one truth in her bones, one certainty in the terror. She was alone, and the enemy was moving in. The radio remained dead. The world was silent, and in that silence death waited. The night was suffocating, pressing against Sergeant Alyssa Grant from all sides. The mountains had become a maze, each ridge sharper, each shadow darker. Her body was coiled tight, instincts on high alert. Every step she took could betray her position. Every whisper of the wind could signal death. She pressed herself flat against the jagged rock, her rifle a natural extension of her body. The young girl she'd pulled into the crevice behind her trembled violently, clutching Alyssa's sleeve with tiny, desperate fingers. Her eyes were wide with terror, reflecting the green glow of Alyssa's night vision goggles. Alyssa's mind raced. One misstep, one misjudged movement, one miscalculated instinct, and both of them were done. Yet she had to move. Staying still meant almost certain death. She scanned the terrain. The lone figure she'd seen on the ridge earlier was gone, replaced by movement she could sense rather than see, shapes blending with shadows, disciplined steps crunching in the mountain dust. The enemy was moving, converging, closing in. Alyssa exhaled slowly, time to navigate. She tucked the girl behind a narrow rock crevice, whispering, "Stay down, stay quiet, don't move until I tell you." The child nodded, though her fear was palpable, each tremble a reminder of the stakes. Alyssa's heart clenched. She was responsible now, not just for herself, but for this innocent life. Sliding along the ridge, she kept her rifle raised. Every footfall was calculated. Loose pebbles threatened to betray her, so she avoided them, testing each patch of earth for stability before committing her weight. The mountains were unforgiving. A slip meant a fall meant death. Then she saw them. 8 figures, disciplined and methodical, moving in a coordinated sweep, rifles up, heads turning, every movement precise. They weren't just searching, they were hunting. They knew exactly where she had been. They were closing in on her. Her pulse jumped. She ducked behind a boulder, flattening herself as low as possible. She could see their bootprints in the dust, converging like predators circling prey. Each footprint told her how fast they were moving, how confident, how determined. Alyssa pressed her cheek against the cool stone, listening, counting, planning. Every second stretched into a lifetime. The wind shifted. A faint crack of movement behind her made her pivot sharply. Her rifle came up instinctively, the cold metal steady in her hands. A shadow moved in the wrong pattern, shifted in a rhythm not dictated by wind or terrain. A figure, cautious, deliberate, approaching her from behind. Not part of the sweeping patrol ahead. Not predictable. Dangerous because it was unknown. Alyssa's stomach twisted. She had trained for ambushes, for impossible odds, for unexpected threats. But this was something else. A shadow moving independently, closing silently, unseen. She flattened herself further, calculating. Could she move forward without being spotted? Could she engage without giving herself away? Could she protect the child if things went wrong? The shadow halted for a heartbeat, then shifted closer. Alyssa held her breath. One wrong move and it could all be over. She scanned the terrain above. The patrol from the ridge was still sweeping downward, rifles raised, movements sharp and disciplined. They were not aware of her exact location yet, but it was only a matter of time. Her mind raced. The mountains offered cover but limited options. Every ridge, every slope, every rock could be a death trap, but staying meant almost certain death. Moving meant risking exposure. Her fingers brushed the strap of her sidearm. A backup, a lifeline if the rifle failed. But drawing it too early would reveal her position. Timing was everything. A sudden rustle, a small rock tumbling down a slope, made her flinch. The enemy scout ahead paused, head snapping toward the sound. Alyssa's heart hammered. She pressed herself flatter, willing the shadows to hide her. And then another figure appeared, emerging from a narrow trail to her left, moving with quiet precision, scanning the valley. Not part of the patrol below, not part of the shadow behind. Alyssa's stomach sank. 2 sets of hunters now, and she was in the middle, trapped between them. She pressed herself against the stone, mind working furiously. She had to create a diversion, something to buy seconds, maybe minutes. A flashbang could work, but she needed distance. Too close and the blast could harm her or the child. She needed a line of sight, a clean throw, a distraction precise enough to give her a chance to escape. A whisper of movement behind her again. The unknown shadow shifted, almost imperceptibly. Alyssa adjusted her rifle. She had seconds, maybe less. The patrol above was sweeping closer, unaware of the exact position but tightening the net. Her eyes scanned for the nearest ledge, a rock overhang, anything that could offer cover and concealment. A narrow slot canyon appeared to her right. Tight, difficult, but potentially enough to shield them both. She signaled to the girl with a finger, "Crawl." The child hesitated, fear etched across her small face. Alyssa whispered urgently, "If they see us, they kill us both. You have to trust me, now." The girl nodded, trembling, and crawled into the narrow slot canyon, rocks shielding her as best as possible. Alyssa pressed herself flat against the rock, her pulse racing. Every second mattered. Every shadow could conceal death. The patrol above stopped, their flashlights sweeping over the terrain. Rifles aimed. Orders whispered into radios. They were close. Too close. Alyssa weighed her options. Engage, impossible; retreat, risk falling into their sweep. Wait could mean discovery. She gritted her teeth. The child was hidden. The patrol was close. The unknown figure behind her was still there, silent, deliberate. Her hand hovered over the flashbang. Timing would be everything. 1 second too early, too late, and it could all fail. Then she saw it. A small overhang, barely noticeable from above, just enough to conceal both herself and the child. A path, narrow, treacherous, but navigable. It was their only chance. Alyssa inched toward it, keeping her body low, rifle raised, every movement precise. The patrol below adjusted, their sweep now closer. The shadow behind shifted again, almost as if sensing her intent. She had to move faster. Every muscle screamed. The terrain was brutal. One misstep and the fall could kill her. She could not afford to look back, could not afford hesitation. As she neared the narrow overhang, the patrol's footsteps drew closer. A beam of flashlight swept over the path she intended to take. Alyssa froze. The unknown shadow behind her shifted once more. She could feel its gaze, sharp and calculating. And then movement. Alyssa realized she had to act now or never. She grabbed the girl's hand, whispering, "On my mark, go." The child nodded, terror clear in her eyes but trust evident. Alyssa pulled her into the narrow overhang. They were both shielded, hidden from the patrol above. The mountain seemed to hold its breath. Silence. And then she heard it, a whisper of movement from the shadow behind them. Closer, intentional, calculated, waiting. Alyssa gritted her teeth, heart pounding, breath shallow. She was alone, surrounded, and every option was fraught with danger. The night pressed in, the mountain waited, and the enemy was moving in. Her fingers tightened around the rifle, her instincts sharpened, and she knew one thing: they were coming for her. The wind whispered through the canyon, carrying with it the faint sound of boots crunching over stone. The patrol above was descending. The shadow behind was watching, and Alyssa Grant had only one chance, one perfect, impossible chance to survive. She exhaled slowly, steadying herself. Every sense was heightened, every heartbeat counted. And then she realized the enemy wasn't just closing in, they were anticipating her every move. And she would have to outthink, outmaneuver, and outfight them, or she and the child would not survive the night. Her pulse surged, her breath came in shallow gasps, every nerve screamed readiness. The mountain was alive with danger. And she had nowhere to run. Alyssa pressed herself against the jagged rock, the child trembling at her side, every heartbeat echoing like a drum of doom in the silent canyon. The patrol above was sweeping downward with methodical precision, rifles trained, every movement measured. The shadow behind her shifted subtly, a silent predator observing, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Alyssa's mind raced. Her instincts screamed move or die, but every option was a knife's edge. The overhang offered some cover, but the enemy's eyes were trained to anticipate even the smallest sign of life. She needed a plan. She needed a miracle. She needed something else. Then she heard it. A faint, unmistakable sound, a human voice speaking in a language she did not recognize. It was soft, deliberate, and yet it carried weight. The voice was behind her, low, just beyond the rocks, but perfectly audible. It was not part of the patrol, not part of the shadow, not a local tribal warning or a distant shout. It was deliberate, close, alive. Alyssa froze, rifle tightening in her hands. She signaled for the girl to stay low. The child pressed herself flat against the dirt, eyes wide with fear. Alyssa's heart pounded in her chest, every nerve screaming danger. "SHH, it's okay," Alyssa whispered, though the words were meant more for herself than the child. She scanned the canyon walls, every boulder, every shadow, every fold of terrain, searching for the source. And then she saw movement. A young girl, barefoot, clothes torn and smeared with dirt, stepped from the shadows, eyes wide and terrified. She froze at the sight of Alyssa, raising both hands in trembling surrender. The child's face was streaked with dirt, lips quivering, teeth chattering in the cold night air. Alyssa's pulse hit her throat. This was not the enemy. This was not the shadow behind her. This was complication, innocence, vulnerability. She lowered her rifle slightly, keeping her hands steady, voice soft. "I'm not here to hurt you. It's okay. Stay calm." The girl shook her head violently, pointing toward the ridge where the patrol had been sweeping. Her eyes pleaded, wide and terrified. Then she whispered in broken English one word: "Hide." Alyssa's stomach clenched. The child understood the danger. She was warning them, warning Alyssa. Her instincts screamed, "Trust her." She pulled the girl closer, pressing her into the shallow overhang, shielding her from view. The patrol above continued their sweep, rifles raised, unaware of the additional presence hidden within the canyon. Alyssa crouched beside the child, whispering urgently, "Stay here. Do not move, no matter what. Do you understand?" The girl nodded, trembling, but her eyes conveyed understanding beyond her years. Alyssa's chest tightened. She knew the stakes. The patrol above was trained, disciplined, lethal. Every second they spent in the canyon brought danger closer. Every shadow could conceal death. Movement above. Voices whispered sharp, urgent commands into radios. Alyssa counted 6 men, possibly more, coordinating their approach. They were methodical, trained to anticipate a target's movement, to close in from multiple angles. She exhaled slowly, forcing calm. Panic was the enemy. Fear could get them both killed. She needed to think. She needed a plan. The shadow behind them shifted again. Alyssa tensed. She could not see the figure clearly, only the outline, the movement, the silent calculation in its posture. It was watching, waiting. And Alyssa could feel it, calculating, predicting, aware of every option she might consider. Her mind raced. Could she engage? Impossible. Could she retreat? Too many unknowns. Could she wait? Too risky. Every choice carried equal potential for disaster. Alyssa scanned the canyon walls, searching for escape, for cover, for advantage. Her eyes settled on a narrow crevice to the right, a slot canyon barely wide enough for a single person. It was dangerous terrain, but it offered concealment, and more importantly, it offered a chance. She whispered to the child, "Crawl into the crevice, now." The girl hesitated, fear etched in every line of her small body. Alyssa's voice hardened, firm but calm. "Do it, trust me. Your life depends on it." The girl nodded, trembling violently, and crawled into the slot canyon, rocks shielding her as best as possible. Alyssa pressed herself flat, rifle raised, watching, waiting. The patrol above shifted. Flashlights swept over the terrain, piercing the shadows with harsh, artificial light. One beam swept dangerously close, glinting off a rock near Alyssa's shoulder. She froze, calculating. One wrong movement and the patrol would see her. One misstep and the child would be exposed. A whisper from the shadow behind them. Closer, intentional, calculated, watching. Alyssa's pulse surged. The night had become a trap, closing in from every direction. The patrol above, the unknown figure behind, and the unforgiving terrain all converged, leaving her no safe path. She weighed her options. She had one, just one, chance to create a diversion, to buy time, to shift the balance. Her fingers brushed the strap of her flashbang. Timing would be critical. Too early and it would fail. Too late and it would be over. She needed distance, line of sight, and perfect execution. The patrol below had started to converge on the canyon floor, stepping cautiously but steadily, guided by instinct and training. The unknown shadow behind was moving, subtle but deliberate, sensing her plan before she could act. Alyssa's mind worked furiously, calculating every angle, every movement, every potential outcome. One chance, one move, and she would have to protect the child at all costs. She inched toward the narrow slot canyon, careful not to alert the patrol above. Her hands remained steady, fingers tight on the rifle, eyes scanning, calculating. Every step was precise, deliberate, measured. Then suddenly the patrol leader barked an order, voices sharp and commanding. Rifles swung. They had seen something, maybe a shadow, maybe movement, maybe instinct. The tension spiked. Alyssa froze. She pressed herself against the rock, counting, measuring, waiting for the precise moment. The girl in the slot canyon pressed close, fear evident in every shiver. The shadow behind moved again, closer, almost imperceptibly, but Alyssa could feel it. Watching, waiting. The patrol leader gestured sharply. A flashlight swept dangerously close to Alyssa's position. She held her breath, heart hammering. Seconds stretched into eternity. Then she saw it, a small overhang, just enough to shield both herself and the child. Risky, treacherous, but potentially survivable. She whispered to the girl, "Now crawl." The child obeyed, trembling violently. disappearing into the slot canyon under the cover of shadows. Alyssa pressed herself flat, rifle ready, eyes on both patrol and shadow. The wind shifted, carrying the faint scent of smoke from distant fires. The mountains seemed to hold their breath. Silence, broken only by distant voices and rustling rocks. And then the shadow behind shifted again, deliberate, deliberate, deliberate. Alyssa knew, whatever was coming next would define the rest of the night. She gritted her teeth, pulse racing, every sense heightened. She was alone, surrounded, and every option was fraught with danger. Her fingers tightened around the rifle. Every instinct screamed survival. Every movement counted. The mountains were alive with danger, and she had nowhere to run. The patrol above tightened their sweep. The shadow behind waited. The child was hidden. And Alyssa Grant knew one horrifying truth: the night had only just begun. The radio was still dead, the valley was silent, and the enemy was moving in. Alyssa's muscles burned with tension, her every nerve straining against the sharp bite of fear. The narrow slot canyon yawned before her, a jagged corridor of stone barely wide enough for a single person. The child pressed against her side, shivering violently but alive. That was all that mattered for now. Survival, one step at a time. The patrol above was closing. Footfalls echoed against the canyon walls like slow, deliberate drums. Their rifles were trained, their flashlights sweeping systematically, cutting through the shadows. Every instinct screamed, move now or die. Alyssa pressed herself into the slot canyon, careful not to scrape against the rock walls. Loose stones threatened to betray her position. Every movement was precise, deliberate. She counted steps, measured distances, memorized the twists and turns of the narrow path. The child whimpered softly. Alyssa whispered, "I know it's scary, but you have to stay quiet, trust me. We'll get through this." The girl nodded, eyes wide, trembling but silent. Alyssa drew a slow breath, feeling the tight coil of fear and adrenaline in her chest. A rustle behind them, Alyssa froze. The shadow had moved again. Subtle, deliberate, patient, watching, calculating. She couldn't see the figure clearly, only the outline, the faint glint of moonlight on some edge of gear. Alyssa pressed herself flatter, instinct screaming. Every second mattered. One misstep, one misjudged movement, and they would both be dead. Ahead, the slot canyon twisted sharply, narrowing almost to a crack between stone walls. Alyssa considered the options. There was a chance here, a dangerous, barely there sliver of opportunity to escape, to put distance between them and the patrol above, and maybe, just maybe, lose the shadow behind. She moved forward slowly, counting each step, feeling the rock beneath her fingertips, the uneven ground beneath her boots. The child followed, silent, trusting her completely. The patrol above had slowed, sensing something. Their flashlights swept over the canyon floor, glinting against the stone, rifles raised, commands whispered into radios. They were tightening the net. Alyssa's pulse thundered in her chest. She had to act fast. She reached a narrow crevice where the canyon twisted sharply. She whispered urgently to the child, "Crawl first. Keep low, follow me." The child obeyed, trembling but silent. Alyssa moved next, pressing herself along the jagged wall, aware that the patrol above could see even the slightest movement. The shadow behind had grown more deliberate, shifting, closing in. She could feel its gaze. Then from above, a flashlight beam swept across the canyon floor, dangerously close. Alyssa froze, heart hammering. One wrong movement and the patrol would spot them. One misstep and it would be over. Her fingers brushed the strap of her flashbang. Timing had to be perfect. She needed distance, a clean throw and distraction. But before she could act, a figure appeared at the edge of the slot canyon, not part of the patrol above, not part of the shadow behind. Unknown, dangerous. Alyssa's stomach sank. This was something new, something she couldn't predict. She pressed herself flat, rifle ready. The figure paused, seemingly aware of her presence but making no aggressive move. A voice whispered from the darkness, low and urgent, "Follow me, quickly." Alyssa's instincts screamed caution. She glanced at the child. The girl's eyes were wide with fear, but she trusted Alyssa completely. One decision now could mean life or death. She weighed her options: stay and risk confrontation. Impossible; engage; too dangerous; follow; risky but maybe the only way forward. Alyssa made the split-second decision. "Go, now," she whispered to the child, grabbing her hand and moving toward the shadowed figure. They followed silently, pressing through narrow passages, squeezing through cracks, feeling the cold stone walls on either side. The air grew colder, tighter, the shadows thicker. Every step carried the risk of discovery. Behind them, faint echoes of movement. The patrol above, the shadow behind, reminded her that danger was omnipresent. Every nerve screamed readiness. The figure ahead led them through a narrow tunnel that twisted unexpectedly, forcing them to crouch, crawl, and press close against the walls. Alyssa's muscles burned, her lungs screamed for air, but she pushed on, knowing that each step brought them closer to safety, or at least survival. Suddenly, the tunnel opened into a small alcove, hidden from sight. The figure gestured for them to stay low. Alyssa pressed herself against the wall, rifle raised, scanning. The child huddled against her, eyes wide, silent tears streaking dirt across her face. Alyssa's mind raced. Who was this stranger, ally or enemy? Was this a trap? Could she trust them? Before she could answer, a faint sound, footsteps echoed from the tunnel entrance behind. The shadow had followed, silent, lethal, watching. Alyssa tensed. One wrong move and they would all be discovered. She whispered to the child, "Stay close, don't move." The shadow moved closer, slow and deliberate. Alyssa could see the faint outline of a rifle, trained, ready. She gritted her teeth, prepared for confrontation. Then the unknown figure ahead acted. A swift, fluid movement, and the shadow was pulled into the darkness of the tunnel. A struggle, a muffled grunt, then silence. Alyssa exhaled slowly, heart racing. She didn't wait to question. She moved with the child, pressing forward through the alcove, deeper into the unknown. The patrol above had not followed. The tunnel offered concealment. For the first time that night, Alyssa allowed herself a flicker of hope. But the danger was not gone. The mountains were alive with predators. The patrol was still out there. The radio was still dead. And she had no idea where this tunnel would lead. She moved forward, every sense alert, muscles coiled for instant reaction. Every shadow could conceal death. Every sound could betray them. The child clung to her side, silent but aware of the danger. Alyssa whispered reassurances she didn't fully feel herself. "We'll make it. Just keep moving. Don't look back." The tunnel twisted again, narrowing, forcing them to press close against the walls. The air grew colder, staler, heavier. Alyssa's mind raced with every possible outcome, every contingency, every survival tactic she'd learned in years of training. And then she heard it, a faint, almost imperceptible sound coming from deep within the tunnel. A voice, not familiar, not American, deliberate, warning. Alyssa froze. She pressed the child closer, heart hammering. Every instinct screamed danger. The mountains, the patrol, the shadow, they were all out there, waiting, watching. She knew one thing with absolute certainty. This tunnel was no accident. Someone had set this up, and they were waiting for her. Every muscle tensed, every nerve screamed readiness, every heartbeat counted. The child's small hand pressed into hers. Alyssa squeezed it, drawing strength from her presence, from her responsibility, from the knowledge that failure meant death, not just for her but for the girl. The voice echoed again, louder this time, closer. A warning or a challenge? Alyssa didn't know. She gritted her teeth, heart racing, and whispered, "Stay close. We have to move. No hesitation, no mistakes." The tunnel twisted again, opening into deeper darkness. The unknown awaited. The patrol still hunted. The shadow still lingered. And Alyssa Grant realized one terrifying truth. The night was far from over. The tunnel stretched endlessly into darkness, cold and unwelcoming. Every step Alyssa took sent small pebbles tumbling against the stone walls, echoing like distant gunfire. Her muscles ached from crouching, crawling, and pressing herself flat against jagged rocks. The child clung to her side, silent but alert, small hands gripping tightly. The unknown figure ahead led the way, moving with fluid precision, shadows twisting with each step. Alyssa's instincts screamed caution. Ally or enemy? There was no way to tell. The tension coiled in her chest like a spring, ready to snap. Her mind raced. The patrol above had been temporarily shaken, but they were disciplined, and she knew it wouldn't be long before they resumed the hunt. The shadow that had stalked them earlier was still out there, silent, calculating, lethal. And this tunnel, twisting, treacherous, held dangers she couldn't yet see. The figure ahead stopped suddenly, pressing themselves against the wall. Alyssa instinctively froze, rifle raised. A low whisper came from the dark. "Quiet, stay back." Alyssa's pulse thundered. She pressed herself closer to the child, every muscle coiled, every nerve screamed. The figure gestured to a narrow crevice just ahead. Alyssa approached cautiously. The tunnel widened slightly, revealing a small chamber lit by faint light filtering from cracks in the rock ceiling. Shadows danced across the walls, creating the illusion of movement, of lurking figures. And then she saw it, signs of previous habitation. Faint scorch marks on the stone, remnants of a fire, crude bedding tucked in a corner, empty cans and bottles scattered along the floor. Someone had been here recently. Someone had used this tunnel as a hideout. Alyssa's stomach tightened. They were not alone. The tunnel held secrets, and secrets in this war zone were rarely benign. The figure ahead spoke again, voice barely audible. "Rest here for a moment. The patrol is near." Alyssa glanced at the child. She could see the terror in her eyes, but also trust that Alyssa would protect her. That trust anchored her resolve. She nodded silently, pressing herself against the wall, rifle raised, scanning every shadow. Her eyes caught a faint movement near the far side of the chamber. A figure, a man, ragged, wiry, eyes sharp, emerged from the shadows, holding a small pistol loosely at his side. Alyssa froze. Her pulse raced. She pressed herself closer to the wall, calculating, weighing options. One wrong move and they could all be dead. The man's eyes swept the chamber, landing briefly on her, then on the child. Recognition, relief, and calculation crossed his face in rapid succession. He gestured to follow him. Without a word, Alyssa moved, signaling the child to stay close. Every step was deliberate, measured. She scanned constantly, aware that the patrol could reappear at any moment, that the shadow behind could strike, that danger lurked in every corner. The man led them through a series of twists and turns, narrow passages that forced Alyssa to crawl, crouch, and press herself flat. The air grew colder, damper, the scent of earth and stone filling her nostrils. And then voices, echoing faintly from above, the unmistakable sound of disciplined men moving, searching. The patrol. The enemy was close. Alyssa froze. The man ahead pressed himself against the wall, signaling for silence. The child whimpered softly, and Alyssa pressed a finger to her lips. Not a sound. The patrol's footsteps grew louder, closer, echoing through the twisting tunnel. Every nerve in Alyssa's body screamed danger. One misstep, one breath too loud, one miscalculation, and it could all end. She glanced at the child. Fear and trust mingled in her eyes. Alyssa drew a slow, steadying breath. We survived together. The man ahead led them into a small alcove, barely visible from the main tunnel. Alyssa pressed herself flat, rifle ready. The child huddled beside her, trembling but silent. From the shadows, the man whispered, "They won't find us here. Wait, be ready." Alyssa's mind raced. Who was this man? Ally or enemy? He had saved them from the shadow, but at what cost? And what was waiting further down the tunnel? The footsteps above grew fainter, then vanished. The patrol had moved on, at least for now. Alyssa allowed herself a momentary sigh of relief, though tension coiled like a snake in her chest. They were not safe. Not yet. The man in the shadows moved closer. Alyssa could see now rough hands, weathered face, eyes sharp with experience. He nodded at her. "You're not far from the exit, but it won't be easy. The mountains are alive tonight." Alyssa's pulse quickened. She had trained for combat, for survival, for impossible odds, but never alone, never with a child, and never in a maze like this. She pressed herself against the wall, scanning the chamber, weighing options. The exit, the way forward, was uncertain. The tunnel twisted and narrowed, the walls jagged, unforgiving, and she could feel it: danger, patience, calculation. The enemy would not relent. The man spoke again, low, urgent. "We move now. One misstep, one wrong breath, and it's over. Stick close. Do not separate." Alyssa nodded. Every instinct screamed readiness. She signaled the child, who pressed close, tiny hand gripping hers. They moved, step by step, inch by inch, through the twisting passages. Alyssa's eyes darted constantly, scanning, calculating, anticipating. The shadows seemed to move of their own accord, shifting, whispering threats, mocking her. And then another sound. A faint scuffle closed, deliberate, the shadow still following, still hunting. Alyssa froze, heart hammering. The child whimpered softly and she whispered, "Quiet, trust me, don't move." The shadow paused, sensing movement, then shifted back, disappearing into the darkness. Alyssa exhaled slowly, heart still racing. They pressed on, deeper into the tunnel. The walls narrowed further, forcing them to crawl in places, to press flat in others. Every step carried risk, every movement could reveal them. Finally, they reached a small chamber, the ceiling low, the walls jagged but offering cover. The man gestured for them to rest. Alyssa pressed herself against the rock, rifle ready, scanning constantly. The child clung to her, silent, trembling. The man spoke, low, urgent. "You're lucky. Most don't make it this far, but the mountains are alive tonight. They'll keep hunting, always." Alyssa nodded, understanding. This was far from over. The patrol, the shadow, the unknown enemy, all were still out there, relentless, patient, waiting for a mistake. She drew a slow breath, pressing the child close. "We survived together," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. And then faintly from deeper in the tunnel a sound. A low, deliberate echo, a trap, a warning, a path forward. Alyssa's instincts screamed caution, but she knew one thing with certainty: the night was far from over. The mountains waited, the shadow waited, and she had nowhere to run. The small chamber smelled of damp stone and old smoke. Alyssa pressed the child close against her chest, her rifle raised, every muscle coiled tight with tension. The man who had led them this far crouched a few feet away, silent, eyes sharp and calculating. He was a guide, maybe an ally, maybe something else, but for now they were dependent on him. A faint metallic scrape echoed from deeper in the tunnel. Alyssa froze, heart hammering. Her pulse screamed warning: the shadow is back. She whispered to the child, "Stay low, stay quiet, don't make a sound." The child nodded, lips pressed together, eyes wide and terrified. Alyssa felt a surge of protectiveness so fierce it burned in her chest. One mistake could mean the end, not just for her, but for this small life she'd sworn to protect. The man ahead motioned silently, pointing to a narrow passage that led upward. "This way," he mouthed. His eyes darted to the chamber entrance, then back at Alyssa. The warning was clear: move now or be trapped. They crawled through the passage, stone scraping against skin, muscles straining. Every inch forward was painstaking, every sound amplified in the stillness of the tunnel. The faint light from cracks above offered little comfort. Shadows seemed to dance along the walls, shapes twisting into forms Alyssa's imagination feared to name. And then she heard it: breath. Not her own, not the child's. Steady, deliberate, measured, close, too close. The shadow. Alyssa froze, pressing the child flat against the stone floor. She could see its faint outline in the dim light, moving slowly, calculated, eyes scanning. This wasn't just a follower, it was a hunter, trained, patient, aware. Her mind raced. Every option she had ever trained for flooded her thoughts. Engage, too dangerous, retreat, impossible, wait, a death sentence. She exhaled slowly, steadying her nerves. She had trained for impossible odds, and this was no different. Only now the stakes were higher, not just her life but the child's. The man ahead signaled for silence, then pressed himself against the wall, gesturing for Alyssa to follow. They inched forward, breath held, every movement precise, deliberate. The shadow mirrored them, silent, lethal, a predator testing its prey. The tunnel twisted sharply, forcing them to crawl. Alyssa's fingers scraped against jagged rock, her knees burned, her lungs screamed for air. The child whimpered softly, fear palpable. Alyssa pressed a finger to her lips, not a sound. Ahead, the passage widened slightly, revealing a small ledge that sloped upward. It was a narrow chance, but it could offer an escape route. Alyssa signaled to the man. He nodded, gesturing for her to go first. She pressed herself against the wall, calculating every step, every handhold, every foothold. The child followed, trembling but silent. And then a misstep. A loose stone tumbled down the slope. The sound echoed through the tunnel like a gunshot. The shadow froze, body tense. And then it moved, fast, deliberate, precise. Alyssa's pulse spiked. She gritted her teeth, pressing herself closer to the wall, moving with the child. Every muscle screamed, every nerve screamed. Survival, one chance, one step at a time. The shadow lunged. Alyssa reacted instinctively, firing her rifle into the darkness. The sound echoed, deafening in the confined tunnel. The shadow dropped, rolling to the side, then sprang back up, unharmed but momentarily startled. "Move," the man hissed, gesturing urgently. Alyssa pressed forward, dragging the child with her. Every step was a battle against fear, against the terrain, against time. The tunnel twisted again, leading to a narrow crevice that opened onto a rocky slope. Moonlight spilled down, revealing the treacherous path below. The mountains lay before them, vast, jagged, unforgiving, but also a possible path to safety. Alyssa peered over the edge. The slope was steep, loose rock threatening every step, but the patrol above had not followed yet. The shadow was still lurking below, silent, calculating. She exhaled slowly, steadying herself. "We go together," she whispered to the child. "One step at a time, trust me." They moved carefully down the slope, each footfall calculated, every handhold tested before committing weight. Rocks shifted, stones tumbled, dust sprayed. The child's small hands clung tightly to hers. Alyssa's heart pounded in her chest. Every nerve screamed alert. The shadow moved again, silent, relentless, calculating. Alyssa knew it was waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Halfway down, the ground beneath them gave way slightly. The child screamed softly, and Alyssa grabbed her just in time, preventing a fall that could have been deadly. "SHH, it's okay. I've got you, don't fight me. Trust me," Alyssa whispered, heart hammering, voice trembling with urgency. They continued downward, inch by inch, each moment stretching into an eternity. The moonlight illuminated the patrol far above, moving slowly, unaware of the tunnel's exit. And then Alyssa saw it, a narrow ridge leading toward a distant tree line. If they could reach it, they might have a chance to disappear, to escape, to survive. But the shadow had anticipated this. It moved to intercept them, emerging from a hidden crevice, blocking the path. Alyssa's pulse jumped. She raised her rifle, aiming. The shadow lunged, fast, precise, trained. Alyssa fired again, the shot ringing in the mountains. The shadow dropped, rolling aside, then regained its stance. The child whimpered, fear etched in every line of her small face. Alyssa pressed her finger to her lips. "Don't panic." The shadow lunged again. Alyssa fired, rolling to the side, dragging the child with her. They crashed against the rocks, sliding dangerously close to the cliff edge. Alyssa's heart pounded. She gritted her teeth, pulling herself up, climbing, dragging the child along. The shadow followed, relentless, lethal, a predator testing its prey. Finally, they reached the narrow ridge. Alyssa paused, breath heaving, eyes scanning. Moonlight illuminated the treacherous terrain ahead. If they could make it to the trees, they might be safe. For now. "Run!" Alyssa hissed, grabbing the child's hand. They sprinted down the ridge, feet sliding on loose rock, hearts hammering. The shadow lunged one last time, but Alyssa was faster, instinct sharper, adrenaline surging. They plunged into the tree line, branches whipping against their faces, roots threatening to trip them. The patrol above had not followed yet, giving them a small window, a narrow chance. Alyssa's lungs burned, muscles screaming, heart pounding. The child pressed close, silent tears streaking her dirty face. Alyssa whispered, "Almost there, just a little farther." Branches tore at their clothes. Mud caked their boots, but they pressed on, driven by sheer willpower, by desperation, by the unyielding need to survive. And then silence. The shadow had not followed into the dense forest. The patrol remained above, unaware of their escape. For now, they were alive. Alyssa pressed the child against her chest, breathing heavily, heart racing. "We made it for now." But she knew the night was far from over. The mountains were alive, hunting, patient, relentless. And somewhere in the shadows, the enemy still waited, calculating, watching, ready for the next move. Alyssa Grant had survived, but the cost had only begun to reveal itself. The hunt was not over, the shadow was not gone, and the mountains held secrets she had yet to uncover. The forest pressed in on Alyssa and the child like a living entity. Branches tore at their faces, roots threatened to trip them, and the shadows seemed to twist with every step. The moonlight barely penetrated the dense canopy, but it was enough to guide them, enough to reveal the treacherous terrain ahead. Alyssa's lungs burned with exertion, her muscles screamed in protest, and yet she could not stop. Not now, not when a small life depended entirely on her. The child clung to her, silent tears streaking dirt and blood across her face, but alive. That was all that mattered. The shadow had not followed into the trees. The patrol above had not descended. For now, they were alone. But Alyssa knew better than to trust the temporary calm. Danger was patient, and the enemy in these mountains was ruthless. She pressed forward, scanning constantly. Every crackle of leaves, every snap of a twig set her nerves on edge. Her rifle remained ready, her senses heightened, adrenaline keeping her muscles taut, her mind razor-sharp. Suddenly a sound, footsteps, faster than before, deliberate, not from above, not patrol, not shadow, something new. Alyssa froze, pressing the child against her chest. The footsteps approached, accompanied by a low, guttural whisper. She could barely make out the silhouette through the thick trees. A man, stocky, armed, moving with deadly precision. Alyssa's mind raced. Could this be a trap, another hunter, or was this someone, finally, who could help them? The figure stopped a few meters away, hands raised in a gesture of truce. "It's okay. I'm not here to hurt you," he whispered. His accent was rough, American, but his tone carried urgency. Alyssa's rifle stayed raised, eyes locked on him. The child whimpered softly, hiding her face against Alyssa. "I know what you're thinking," the man continued. "But if you don't move with me now, they'll find you. The patrol, the shadow, they're relentless. I can get you to safety, but you have to trust me, right now." Alyssa hesitated, every instinct screaming caution. She had trained for deception, for ambushes, for impossible odds, but she could see the truth in his eyes, the urgency, the sincerity. Survival was the priority. She whispered to the child, "Stay close. We have to trust him for now." The man nodded, "Follow me quickly." They moved, Alyssa leading the child, the man just ahead guiding the way. The forest became a maze, roots and rocks making every step precarious. The moonlight flickered through the leaves, casting dancing shadows that seemed to move with them. Alyssa's mind was alert. Every sound, every movement, every shadow could be a threat. The patrol above, the shadow that had stalked them, and now the unknown figure ahead, all elements of a deadly game. Survival required focus, instinct, and nerves of steel. Hours seemed to pass in silence, broken only by the occasional crack of branches and the child's quiet whimpers. The man led them through narrow passages, hidden valleys, and treacherous slopes, always moving with caution, always alert. And then a clearing. The man stopped, motioning for them to crouch. "We're close. There's a safe house up ahead, hidden. You can rest there, get help, and finally be out of immediate danger, but we have to move carefully. They're still out there." Alyssa pressed herself against the child, chest heaving. Relief was tempered with exhaustion, fear, and lingering tension. They were alive, but for how long? Suddenly, a snap behind them. Alyssa spun, rifle up. The shadow had returned. Silent, lethal, eyes glinting in the darkness. It had tracked them from the tunnel to the forest. The man cursed under his breath. "Move now." Alyssa grabbed the child, sprinting across the clearing, roots and rocks threatening to trip them. The shadow lunged from the trees, rifle trained, but the man intercepted, firing a precise shot that forced the hunter to retreat momentarily. Adrenaline surged through Alyssa. This was it, the final push. They had come too far to be stopped now. They plunged into a hidden path, barely visible under thick foliage. The forest walls closed in, concealing their movement. Alyssa's muscles screamed, lungs burned, but she pressed on, dragging the child with her. The man led them to a small cabin, hidden by trees and rock formations. Smoke curled faintly from the chimney, a sign of life, of safety. "Inside," he whispered, motioning for them to enter. They slipped into the cabin, the door closing softly behind them. Alyssa pressed the child against her chest, inhaling the faint scent of safety, of warmth, of temporary reprieve. The man locked the door behind them. "You're safe for now. They can't find you here, but you'll need to rest, and then you'll need to decide your next move." Alyssa sank against the wall, relief washing over her in trembling waves. She held the child close, whispering reassurances. "We made it. We're alive. For now, we're alive." The child finally exhaled, tiny arms wrapping around Alyssa's neck. Tears streamed silently down her face. Alyssa stroked her hair, whispering softly, her own exhaustion and fear threatening to overwhelm her. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the faint sounds of the mountains, the distant patrol, the shadow lurking, the untamed wilderness. Danger was not gone. It was patient, waiting for the next mistake, the next misstep. Inside the cabin, however, there was a moment of fragile peace. Alyssa allowed herself to breathe, to feel, to process the horrors of the night. The child's warmth against her chest reminded her why survival mattered, why every impossible choice, every leap of faith, every risk had been worth it. The man seated himself across from them, eyes still sharp, scanning the windows. "You're not out of danger," he said, "but you've survived the worst. The night was against you, but you made it through." Alyssa nodded, heart still racing, body exhausted. She had navigated impossible terrain, evaded patrols, survived ambushes, and protected a small life when it mattered most. She had been alone, then guided by strangers, then hunted relentlessly, but she had survived. The radio remained silent, the mountains remained wild, and the shadow remained a lingering threat. But for the first time in hours, Alyssa allowed herself a moment of relief. She pressed the child's face against her chest. "You're safe now," she whispered, "safe for now." And though the night had been merciless, though danger still waited beyond the cabin walls, Alyssa Grant knew one undeniable truth. She had survived, and she would continue to survive. The mountains might be alive with predators, the enemy might still be hunting, but she had proven one thing. Her instincts, her courage, and her resolve were unbreakable. For now, in the fragile dawn light creeping through the cabin's windows, there was survival, there was safety, there was hope. And the night, relentless as it had been, had finally begun to break.